Have you ever walked away from an avoidant partner thinking, they clearly don't care, I never mattered to them? Let me tell you, reality isn't that simple. Avoidants are masters of emotional disguise. So good they often fool themselves. They may act cold, distant, like you were nothing more than a chapter easily closed. But behind that wall, there could be a storm. Here's what most people don't know. Many avoidants are secretly obsessed with you, they just won't admit it. Not to you, not to their friends, not even to themselves. In this video, I'll break down 5 subtle yet undeniable signs that an avoidant is thinking about you all the time, even when they're pretending you don't exist. This isn't about manipulation or games. This is about truth psychology that explains what's really happening when they pull away, give mixed signals, or disappear out of nowhere. And listen carefully. Understanding this is not an invitation to chase them. It's an opportunity to reclaim your power and your peace. If you've ever asked yourself, do they even think about me? Did I ever matter? This video will give you the clarity you've been searching for. So hit subscribe and turn on that notification bell, because by the end of this video, you won't just understand them, you'll understand you. You'll rediscover your worth and know how to choose a love that feels safe instead of a love that keeps you guessing. Ready? Let's dive on. To understand why someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style often takes so long to respond, you need to step outside your own perspective and look through the lens of their psychology. Delayed replies are not a game, nor a sign of indifference. They are the outcome of a deeply ingrained defense mechanism built in childhood. And it all starts with this truth. For them, emotional closeness was never safe. It was a threat. As children, when many kids were embraced and emotionally soothed, they often learned the opposite lesson. Asking for care meant disappointment. Showing feelings meant rejection or dismissal. So they adopted a survival rule early on. If I want peace, I must rely on myself, never depend on anyone. That belief became the foundation of their avoidant attachment, a coping strategy carried into adulthood. Now, when you send a seemingly harmless text like, I miss you, or what are you up to, you see care and connection, but in their mind, it's something else entirely. For them, a message isn't just words, it's a pull toward intimacy, the very thing they've spent years guarding against. Every text you send can trigger an internal alarm. Someone is getting too close. I'm about to lose my freedom. And what's their instinctive response? Pull away. This is why they delay, not to hurt you, but to regulate their own sense of safety. Each moment of silence is a way to reclaim control. They tell themselves, I'll reply later, but later often stretches into hours or even days. It's not about lack of care. It's about creating space to calm their fear of being engulfed. Another key point, many avoidants view communication as functional, not as a constant lifeline of connection. To them, not replying right away doesn't signal a crisis while you're staring at your phone with a heavy heart. They might be working, relaxing, or simply unaware that their delay feels like rejection. This mismatch in expectations deepens your anxiety, and that very anxiety often fuels the avoidant anxious cycle. Here's the uncomfortable paradox. The more abandoned you feel, the more you want to text again for reassurance. Yet this usually has the opposite effect. It makes them feel pressured and withdraw even further. So before we dive into solutions, hold on to this truth. Their delay says nothing about your worth. It says everything about their fear. This is the foundation for what comes next. How do you break free from this emotional loop? How do you respond like someone secure without letting their silence dictate your value? And most importantly, how do you keep your peace, whether they change or not? That's what we'll uncover next. Now that you understand why they delay their responses, let's dive into an intriguing yet paradoxical truth. They react strongly when you pull away. This sounds contradictory. Avoidance craves space. So why do they get unsettled when you stop reaching out? The answer lies in their complex psychological wiring. Dismissive avoidants tend to maintain control in a relationship by managing the distance. They feel safest when they dictate the rhythm of connection, close when it suits them, distant when they need space. But when you disrupt that rhythm by going quiet, no longer initiating as before, they sense a loss of control. And that loss creates anxiety for them. Interestingly, This anxiety doesn't mean they suddenly crave intimacy. It stems from the fear of losing a sense of power and the assurance that you'll always be there. When you step out of the orbit they've designed, they face an uncomfortable truth. Maybe I'm not as important as I assumed. Maybe I'm losing something I took for granted. And that realization can feel threatening. Instead of acknowledging this fear openly, avoidants often express it in indirect ways. Some will act annoyed or even colder, testing whether you'll resume chasing. Others resort to passive tactics to create tension, dropping vague hints on social media, casually mentioning how busy they are, or even name-dropping someone else to spark your attention. Then there are those who use subtle control strategies, becoming briefly more responsive to pull you back in, only to withdraw again once they feel safe in their usual dynamic. This is an unspoken power play that plays out in many avoidant relationships. You notice their indifference when you try to get close, but the moment you pull back, they stir. Not because they've transformed into a securely attached partner, but because your withdrawal touches a sensitive nerve, their need to feel in control and certain of your presence. Here's the challenge. If you don't recognize this pattern, you'll easily fall into the anxious, avoidant loop, retreating to test them, rushing back when they react, spinning in circles, with no real progress toward deeper connection. That's why you must distinguish this truth. They're reacting to a perceived loss of control, not a sudden readiness for closeness. And this brings us to the transition into the next section. What happens to you, the anxiously attached partner, when you get trapped in this cycle? Because every time they pull away, panic sets in. Every time they respond to your withdrawal, hope resurfaces. That pendulum swing keeps you hooked, measuring your worth by their reactions. In the next part, we'll uncover why these delays and silent power plays hit you so hard and, more importantly, how you can break free before it costs you your peace of mind. When you step deeper into the psychological dynamics of an avoidant, you'll discover a fascinating truth. They remember details you may have long forgotten. This can be confusing because if they didn't care, why would they hold on to such small fragments of your life? This alone shatters the common myth that avoidants don't feel anything. They do, they just love differently through a lens of fear and self-protection. Think about it. There were moments you casually mentioned your favorite song, a small coffee shop you visited, or a quirky habit you didn't think mattered. Then, one day, they bring it up. Still listening to that track? Or, I passed by that cafe you once mentioned. These seemingly trivial remarks prove something. They notice. They remember. This isn't indifference. It's the silent language of someone who wants to connect without losing their shield. Why does this happen? Because avoidants, while masters at building walls, still crave emotional safety on a deeper level. They rarely express feelings openly, but quietly, they collect bits and pieces that make you feel familiar. These details serve as anchors, tiny, safe ways to hold on without surrendering control. It's their way of loving within the limits of their comfort zone, observing from a distance, remembering without declaring. And here's what it proves. People who truly don't care don't remember. So when someone stores those fragments about you, it means you're not just another passing face. But, and this is critical, don't mistake this memory for readiness. Remembering your love for latte or that old movie doesn't mean they've conquered their fear of intimacy. It only means there's a thread, a thin one, that ties them to you. This paradox is striking. They ignore texts, disappear for days, yet they know things you thought they forgot. And this paradox can trap the anxious partner in hope. They do care, they just need time. Here's where you need clarity. Hope can become the rope that binds you to imbalance if you let these crumbs overshadow the emptiness. Ask yourself, is their ability to remember enough to justify sacrificing your peace and sense of priority? Memory is not action. And in relationships, action, not sentiment, is what builds trust and safety. If their care only shows up in fragments of recollection, but never in consistent presence, you must question, are you loving a person or a story you've built from scattered signs? And this brings us to the next critical step. The consequences for you when you keep reading into these mixed signals. Because the truth is, every remembered detail can become fuel for hope, making you overlook the long silences and emotional instability. In the next section, we'll explore why clinging to these signs keeps you stuck in a loop of pain and how to break free with strength and clarity. Another confusing pattern many people notice is that avoidants always seem to linger in your orbit. They might not initiate plans or suggest deep conversations, yet somehow they still find ways to stay present indirectly and strategically. You might see them liking your social media post after days of silence or leaving a casual comment that feels unnecessary but serves one purpose: reminding you they still exist in your world. They may show up at events where they know you'll be or engage with mutual friends in ways that keep their name floating near yours. This isn't random, it's intentional, rooted in a dual need unique to avoidance: the desire to avoid entanglement while fearing complete disconnection. They're not ready to move toward you openly because that means lowering their walls and facing their fear of intimacy. But they're also unwilling to disappear entirely because that stirs anxiety about losing control and familiarity. So they choose the gray zone, a calculated middle ground. Far enough to avoid feeling engulfed, close enough to maintain a thread of connection. That's why they feel like a satellite, never fully landing in your emotional orbit, yet never drifting out of range. And here's the paradox. This hovering presence makes it even harder for an anxiously attached person to let go. Each time they appear, whether through an online interaction or a seemingly coincidental encounter, you receive a subtle dopamine hit. They still care. Maybe I just need to wait a little longer. Those scattered signals feed hope, which in turn makes you tolerate uncertainty far longer than you should. This creates a dangerous psychological loop because you're no longer judging the relationship based on consistent behavior. Instead, you cling to crumbs, mistaking them for proof of devotion. The consequence? You lose the ability to distinguish between real connection and illusion maintenance. You assume their hovering means they want to move closer, but in reality, it's often a strategy to manage their own fear of loss and preserve control. They want to know you're still there, not because they're ready to show up fully, but because your presence provides them with comfort and security on their terms. And this is the perfect transition into our next section. Once you recognize that this half-presence isn't love in its fullest form, you must decide, will you keep spinning in their orbit, or will you step out to create your own, where clarity, commitment, and emotional safety exist. In the next part, we'll dive into healthy ways to respond, how to stop giving power to mixed signals, and start reclaiming your energy, boundaries, and self-worth. One of the biggest paradoxes of dismissive avoidance is this: they sabotage connection right when things start to get deep. Have you noticed? Everything seems to be going well. The conversation feels genuine. Emotional closeness is growing, and suddenly they pull away. They disappear for days, claim they're busy, or request a little space. This abrupt shift often follows a period of sweetness, leaving you stunned and asking, "What did I do wrong?" But the truth has little to do with you and everything to do with their hidden fear. Avoidants don't retreat because they don't care. Ironically, it's because they care more than they're comfortable with. When intimacy rises, their early survival system kicks in with an alarm. Danger! If I let this person get closer, I'll be consumed. I'll lose my freedom. I'll get hurt. This isn't rational. It's an ingrained reflex formed long ago. So they act like a stretched spring, snapping back to regain distance. What makes this harder is how their withdrawal triggers the anxious partner into crisis. Just moments ago, closeness felt real and reassuring. Then, it's gone. That whiplash sends you scrambling, texting more, seeking explanations, bending over backwards to pull them back. Ironically, these efforts reinforce their fear, driving them further away. This cycle repeats endlessly. They step forward when safe, then backpedal twice as far when threatened. Each return rekindles your hope, tempting you to forgive and restart the loop. Slowly, you become stuck in a tug-of-war where joy mingles with constant anxiety and love morphs into an addiction to the dopamine hit of, when will they come back? Here's the truth. This sabotage isn't malicious. Avoidants aren't trying to hurt you. They're trying to protect themselves from their worst-case scenario, losing independence and reliving old wounds. But while their reasons might earn empathy, they don't erase your pain or make this pattern healthy. This is your turning point. Can you live with this push-pull dynamic and still feel peaceful? If not, the only way out is to break the cycle, not by changing them, but by reclaiming control of your own actions and emotions. And that brings us to the next section, the one you've been waiting for. How to respond in a healthy way when faced with this withdrawal pattern. You'll learn how to stop feeding their fear, how to keep silence from hijacking your self-worth, and how to communicate with clarity and strength. More importantly, you'll discover how to prioritize your peace over chasing mixed signals, because real love isn't a tug of war between hope and anxiety. It's a safe space for two people, and if that space doesn't exist here, you deserve to find it elsewhere. We've walked a long road together, from uncovering why avoidants delay responses, to understanding their paradoxical behaviors, and analyzing how these patterns impact you. We've explored the cycle of hope and disappointment, their hovering presence in your orbit, and the deep fear that makes them pull away when things get close. Now comes the most important part, not decoding them further, but asking yourself one crucial question. What do you want for yourself? You can spend months or years trying to adapt to an avoidance unpredictable rhythm, but will that patience buy you the peace and love you deserve? Or will it slowly erode the strongest, most confident version of who you are? The truth is, you can't control how someone loves, nor can you force them to overcome fears they're not ready to face. But you can always choose how you love and how you love yourself. That starts with setting a clear boundary. I deserve a relationship where I'm respected, prioritized, and emotionally safe. Remember this, their silence does not define your worth. Their disappearance is not proof that you're not enough. It's a reflection of their fear and survival patterns, not your value. But allowing this cycle to continue, that's your choice. And sometimes the most loving choice is to let go. Not because you've stopped loving them, but because you've started loving yourself more. Because real love doesn't thrive on fear and waiting, it grows in freedom and clarity. As Khalil Gibran beautifully said, love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. If you feel trapped in an anxious, uncertain loop today, ask yourself, is the love I'm holding on to real connection or an illusion fueled by fear of loss? If that question hurts, remember this, you are enough, and you deserve a love that feels safe, consistent, and free. And if it's not here, you have the strength to create it for yourself. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this journey. If this message resonated with you, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs it. It might change the way they see themselves in love. And remember, your power isn't in making someone stay, it's in knowing what you're worth and choosing it. See you in the next one.